Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Hope you're having a fabulous week. Better than mine. Mine was crap again, but hope you're having a fabulous week. Hope your tanks are doing well. Um, Not much today. I have Ray and Holly with me. We don't have a guest and we don't have a real topic, so it is open chat. So anything you guys want to chat about, get your questions up in there. I know we've got Zen Ginger right around the corner getting some seahorses, so we want to hear any questions from her. And we're still looking forward to doing that stream, Zen, when you join us and, ask the questions live. Even if you don't want to be on video, you could be on audio and, ask the questions so we can go back and forth. Only thing I got for this week is that I'm trying something new, trying Skinny Girl, supposedly low calorie wine. It does taste like Chardonnay, so it's not blowing my mind, but it's not terrible. For any of you wine people out there. And let's see, the only other thing from me is that I know that most of you who watch every week know that I did lose a seahorse. Um, about a month ago? 3 weeks ago?
A few weeks ago, I think, a couple
Yeah.
weeks.
So I just wanted to give you the update that again, nothing has changed. So just again, sometimes stuff just happens and you don't really ever know why. As I mentioned, when it happened, I did do a big water change. I was huge, observing the remaining seahorses like crazy. It was an overstocked tank, so I knew there could be possibility of problems. I put off separating them for too long, and then I lost a seahorse. The rest have been fine since. They've been very active, maybe even more active. We discussed that last week about how when the most dominant seahorse in the tank is either moved or leaves for whatever reason, sometimes the rest all of a sudden have more spunk, I guess is a way to put it. But everybody's eating fine. Everybody is eating fine. um, I did do, like I said, I did a big water change. I haven't changed anything, and I haven't hospitalized anyone because I didn't catch that there was anything wrong with the seahorse that I lost in time. And apparently I saw a few clues, but it wasn't to a point where I thought it needed hospitalization. And since he's been gone, I haven't had any trouble with the rest of them. So I'm really thinking it was just something with him, fingers crossed, but I'm watching like crazy. Um, and Ray, as I get older, I need skinny girl. Trust me. Trust me. But anyhow, so that's about it for me. So again, guys, it's open chat. And hey, Fish Fam Link, don't forget to check out all the other cool channels that are on Fish Fam Link. And yeah, so today is just truly open chat where I don't even have anything that I really need to talk about. So it's going to be up to you guys to ask questions, or let's check in with Holly. What's up with Holly?
Not too much. Today was water change day here, and so yeah, did that on both the tanks. So everybody's just hanging out now. Nobody's having any problems at the moment. Like you said, everybody seems fine. So I'm curious though about your seahorses. Is anybody pairing up, or they're just kind of hanging together since you lost the other?
Well, so now the remaining is one male and three female. So he's kind of got his pick. And I see him
Yeah,
dancing with all of them, right?
everybody.
So
That's
he's
how it
just
is.
having a blast because I think the male that I lost was more dominant. And I mean, the male that I have left is from Vincent, and
Mhm.
he's so pretty. I would flirt with him if I was a seahorse. So, I get it. Why all the girls want him. But he's so sparkly and so pretty. And he almost even seems to be like, I feel that I'm guilty of not paying close enough attention. I've been really busy lately. You guys know that. I'm always late and
Mhm.
rushing and, bitching about my work and stuff like that. And I
Is
feel
that
like I
why we
wasn't.
don't have our screen friends with us?
What?
Is that why
For
we
the
don't have our screen friends?
seahorses, yeah.
What are you talking about?
Good observation, Ray. We don't have our little seahorses in our
Oh,
display.
you know why we don't, Holly? It's because I turned them off the other day when we were doing Mary Kay. That's why.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
There we go. now they're on.
You
But
could
yes,
have
right.
left them on
Obviously,
for Mary Kay. That would have been fun.
right. We did a Mary Kay party. Holly had a Mary Kay party, and I attended, and we ended up using this format. So yeah, I turned it off. I didn't figure they wanted to see seahorses. Sorry, guys, but thank you for pointing it out, Ray. And I'm gonna get to your question in a second, Zen. But yeah, I feel like I wasn't observing very much. I can't even remember what your question was, Holly. But I just wanted to say this male. Oh, whether they were pairing up. So this
Yeah.
male that's left, I swear to you, he like bulked up overnight. Like again, maybe I just wasn't observing very well, and maybe he was growing a lot the whole time. But he all of a sudden looks like this big, huge male. Whereas, and the other male was bigger. So maybe it was just in comparison, he didn't seem so big, but now he seems bigger. He seems brighter. He seems more cocky. He seems more sparkly. I don't know. I need to post pictures. Another thing I keep telling myself to do and then don't get around to. I will try to after the stream. But yeah, I don't, they are pairing up. He's pairing up with everybody though. So it's not like I'm expecting Fry around the corner. I don't see two doing when I say pairing up, I mean they're doing the chasing, they're doing the turning bright white, they're doing the, um, bumping each other and kind of the
Flirting,
head
yeah.
thing and all that. But I've not seen them do the circling spin to the top
Yeah.
where they're about to do an egg exchange. I haven't seen any of that. I have seen them like locking tails and swimming across the tank, but not the twirling, which is my sign for, oh, they're about to do an egg exchange. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably like, what the heck is she talking about? Seahorses, there's a few cues that make me know, okay, now we're getting serious because seahorses always flirt. Girls flirt with girls, right? Boys flirt with boys. They're always flirting. But when I feel that when I know they're about to seriously have an egg exchange and have fry, there's a couple of things that happen. First of all, the female will get withdrawn. So all of a sudden if you are observant, you'll be like, why is my female, not coming out as quickly for food? Why is she kind of hanging out in the shadows? If you're not observant, you wouldn't even notice that. So, but because they still come to eat and everything, when I've been paying close attention, I noticed the female backs off a bit, and I feel that it's because she's creating eggs or, boosting up the egg supply, whatever they do. I don't know how that works, but she's making them eggs. And then you'll see them do the spinning where I've got videos, I can definitely post them, but the spinning around each other going towards the surface. And what they're doing is trying to line up to get the female's ovipositor into the male's pouch to release the eggs to him. And also the female will start nodding. And what I mean by nodding is, I've got other videos of this too, where the female will literally be flirting with the male and she'll start going like this,
Point
pointing her
her nose
snout,
out.
like,
Let's
go
go.
up, buddy, go up.
Yeah.
And then they do the twirling and get ready to do an egg exchange. So basically, it really is all on the female side because she makes the egg, or I don't know if, like, I don't think they make eggs until they're ready. I'm not scientific on this stuff, guys. I've just seen it happen. So she's making her eggs, and then when she's ready to give them to him, she's decided they're good enough, or she's whatever. Then she nods to tell him to spin up, and then they do their spin, and he takes the eggs. I've not seen any of those three things. So I'm not excited like I'm going to have fry tomorrow, but we'll see, I am going to try to split off the seahorses, maybe even add some new blood and see what happens. Because I still want fry, but at the moment I am just so busy. I wouldn't want to do a poor job raising them. So it's probably good that they're not spitting out. Maybe they know. Maybe they're like, we're waiting for you, Mom, because we
Yeah.
want you to be ready. Because even though I want fry really badly, it would be very irresponsible for me. That'd be like me having my own baby right now. It would not be a good time, right? Just not a good time. So anyways, I feel still hopeful that I will eventually have fry again. And I think that this setback where I lost a male, I don't think he was ever going to give me fry anyways. I just felt something was odd about him from the start. Um, and his female companion that he came with is the one that always had the white ball on her tail. that's not saying anything. It grew with her. It never got bigger or smaller compared to her. So I think it was just a deformity. But sometimes, you just get seahorses that don't breed, for whatever reason. It's unusual to me. When I bought from Seahorse Source, man, you had to keep those guys separated because they've been spitting out babies so fast you couldn't even keep up. So it's been odd for me to have this experience of seahorses that don't give me fry, but maybe it's just timing and maybe it's a good thing.
Well,
I
something
do
you
see.
can try though,
Yeah, yeah.
i- if you really want them, what, I don't know, maybe a decade or so ago, a fellow that bought some of my seahorses wasn't getting any luck. And basically, he had a pretty simple system because he was copying what I was doing,
Hmm.
but he had this problem. So, what I had him do was get more into substrate and grasses and so on,
Mm,
and decor that really crowded up the tank.
okay.
And the change going from a minimal situation to that enlarged system, I don't know if that's what did it or not, but all of a sudden they started producing babies again. And the only reason I thought of it is because another fellow that had bought them from me on his own went and made changes like that, and that got his to produce at that time. And
Huh.
that was Reed-Eye at the time, but I would imagine it might work for any of them.
Well, no, and that's really interesting because it is really surprising that small changes will, put them in a different situation where then they want to breed. I know, yeah, I've talked with Dan repeatedly about the change in temper. Like I have all these things, like a list in my head of things that I could change, but I don't want to do them all at once because then, like you said, I won't know
Right.
what worked. But in
Yep.
this case, I keep my tank pretty like that's
Mhm.
one thing is by changing temperature a little bit, just a little bit. Like my tank sits at like 68, 69. If I
My
changed it to 72, 73, that might spruce them into, I also haven't been doing live foods. I haven't for quite a while. And I do know that like in my first because one of the things I thought was, well, it's because it's a smaller tank and it doesn't have a sump. It's an all-in-one. That's why. That's got to be it. But my seahorses in my very first tank, which was way too small, had way too many seahorses. They bred like rabbits. So that, I don't think that's it. But now that you said that, Ray, that tank was covered in macro and it was really crowded. So
Yep.
I might, maybe I'll try that first before I start messing with temperature. Well, first, you guys, I'm going to get my life together, right? So I can have time to raise them. But then once I do that, I'll try adding a bunch of stuff to the tank, seeing if the more crowded situation puts them in some kind of mood. I will then try to mess with temperature. And then, of course, lighting is always, you mess with lighting, different things occur. You just never know. But yeah, once I'm like to the point where I'm like, yes, I want fry and I can actually take care of them. Like I have the, brine shrimp connection and I'm ready. And I'm not even set up to hatch brine shrimp right now. So like if they did give me fry tomorrow, I'd be in trouble. So when I'm in that spot, I'll start trying to play with these things and then give you guys feedback and let you know what I think worked. But at the moment, they're just behaving for me and being good. And I'm still sad that I did lose the one. And I'm sharing because it does happen to the best of us. Sometimes stuff just happens. And I don't think I'll ever know why. They're just, something was wrong in the tank. I didn't catch it. Or something was wrong with him. I didn't catch it. And now I'm paying much more close attention to the rest of them, right? So if anything does go wrong again, I'll know. But I think Zen asked a question. Hang on. She said, if none of y'all had any currently, but had, let's say, like $2,000 to set up a new system, however you wanted, knowing that everyone was different, what would you all set up? That is a great question. Holly, you answer first.
Oh, geez. I really don't know. I mean, not seahorses or a seahorse setup. Like,
I
can
think
you pick
I think she
seahorses?
wants seahorse.
Okay.
I get your question. So you're saying like I could have
Oh,
anything. I could have sharks or something, or rays or
yeah,
something. Or did she say
or
seahorses?
whatever. She says if we didn't have seahorses currently, but had 2 grand to set up a new system, however you wanted, what would you all set up? So I guess she means seahorses. Like if you
Yeah.
didn't already have seahorses, but you were doing them, I'd have to.
I think she's asking like slyly for herself because she's
Yeah,
getting ready to set up her tank. So she's saying, "How would
yeah.
you set it up?" Yeah.
That's kind of what I feel like
What
she's
you're getting?
asking. And
Okay.
I would probably say I'd do what I'm doing now, but I might get like some more expensive equipment that I don't have currently.
Okay.
I might get like some extra things in my sump, like the algae scrubber thing or.
Mm-hmm.
So a bigger sump maybe so I could fit more stuff in that and have some fancy stuff like that roller
Oh yeah.
mat instead of a
Yeah.
sock, that kind of thing. Maybe one of those systems that monitor your tanks, that kind of technology stuff. But
Like the
honestly,
apex. Yeah.
I want to say my setups and I had one tank. My acrylic was given to me. I already had that. But I'd say the setups that I have now probably cost me about 2 grand if I think about all I've put into them. so
Right. Right.
so you'd have to have more than that to do really fancy stuff, I think. Like the
Well.
Apex stuff and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I was I think it probably cost me about 2 grand to do what I've already done. But if I had 2 more grand,
Hmm.
I could spend it on some fancy stuff, I think, is what I'd do.
You just
Well, and
buy
I know
more of those
Ray.
decorations.
Yeah.
What's that?
Holly'd have a decor.
You just
Go ahead.
buy more of those decorations.
Oh yeah, I could spend a couple
That's where your
grand
two
quick
grand went.
at what that one Ocean Aquaria, not Ocean Aquaria. What is it? The one that has the seahorse hitches. Is that it? Ocean Aquaria, or is it
Hmm.
something else? Then if
I
it's
think that's
Ocean
it.
Aquaria, yeah, because like one coral is like 100 or something
Yeah.
bucks. you
Right.
know you can spend money fast in this hobby.
So yeah,
That's for sure.
exactly. I'm curious from Ray before I give my answer. So Ray, if you had 2 grand to set up a seahorse system, and let's say you didn't want fry, that wasn't your goal for a sterile fry making tank, but you were just going for what you want to look at every day. What would you do? What kind of equipment would you get? How would you put sand in? What would you do?
Being me, I'm not going to do anything different than what I've done.
Hmm.
Well,
I'm
and
a
your seahorses.
minimalist. I
Yeah.
build my own stuff. Like my sumps aren't sumps as people know them with all the dividers. They're just tanks.
Hmm.
They're places to increase the volume, places that I put my rock in for my biological filter. And if I have something else, maybe I want to draw a skimmer out of the sump. So the pump to feed the skimmer would be in there because my skimmers are too big to fit in any sump.
Right.
Um, like I'm not, my method is not good for her.
Well, I mean, it is. It just depends on what you like, and that is the thing,
I
Zed.
bet
Is
Ray could spend that on some nice tools
there
for
you
his
go.
do it yourself.
Yeah,
Nice what?
tools.
Some nice tools for your do it yourself projects. I said,
Oh
I bet
hell.
you could spend 2 grand and get yourself some nice tools for
Well,
your do it.
I've got thousands of dollars worth of tools, but they're automotive tools.
Um,
And this weekend I took on a woodworking project, basically because I wanted to do something and I don't have all the tools to do it. So
Hmm.
it means I'm going to have to use the noggin here. And to me,
mm-hmm.
because I have cognitive impairment, anything that I can do to use the brain power um, is stimulation that's going to in um keep me longer without getting the actual dementia. So I
Hmm.
took on making a picnic table slash bench.
Oh,
It's
nice.
convertible. You have a picnic table out there, and then you grab one side of it and turn it up, and so the tabletop now becomes the back of the bench. The two seat pieces come together and make the seat for the bench. Uh,
Nice.
so I made the two sides on it, and it was a lot of work figuring out things because I don't have a saw that cuts angles and so on. And this is very critical for this thing to cut an angle or to make angles. So
Hmm.
I had to sit there and work on figuring out some like trigonometry from high school days back in the
Yeah.
50s. And so that was interesting. But if I was younger, yeah, I'd spend a lot of money on woodworking tools now.
Yeah.
So, so I agree. I'm gonna say, to answer your question, my turn now. I'm the exact opposite of Ray. I don't like to have to figure things out. The one time that I tried to do it yourself, a sump with a brute tote, it ended up a disaster, absolute disaster. I did follow Cheryl's instructions to make the Seahorse tubs, and those were really cool, and that was successful. But I followed her instruction to a T. So the first thing I would say is definitely, if you're able and you have the space, go with a sump, go with a tank that's already set up with the sump, right? Like so that you don't have. I mean, I shouldn't say you. So if it were me and my guy said, "Here's 2 grand, set your tank up," I would spend the money on equipment, on making sure the tank is set up for me. Like so I don't have to drill things or
Yeah.
figure out which bulkhead or I would literally. I don't even know how much they are these days, but I would buy one of the sumps that are with it, like buy it together, right? So it's done
Hmm.
deal. It's all fixed. And if something goes wrong, I call the manufacturer, not me, right? Because I'm not as good at do-it-yourself stuff.
Yeah.
I would absolutely get an oversized skimmer, the biggest skimmer you can get that will fit the sump. Get it. Skimmers are key. Like Holly said, I would kind of look. I don't know how far 2 grand goes, but
Not
because
as far as you would hope. I've
I
looked at
know
stuff, right?
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying is most of my tanks literally are either have been set up for years or even the not running ones. I had a lot of little tanks that I would just keep like a pair of Seahorses in, and in those tanks I did things differently. They were like transition tanks, right? Like almost like hospital tanks that were just there until I figured out how I wanted to where I wanted them to be in other
Yeah.
tanks. um so, but anyways, so I would spend my money in ways that made sure that I had to do less work later, if that makes sense. Big skimmer, maybe that
I
roller thing,
agree with that.
or a lot of backup equipment, right? The other thing I would
Yeah.
the other thing I would
Good
spend big
idea.
bucks on, this is going to be something that Seahorse people never say. So I'm going to throw in the fact that it depends on what you're trying to do. Okay? Explain. So where I'm going is lighting. I actually I would invest more time into researching the lighting that I needed for the tank that I was building. For instance, my favorite tank after all these years was my first tank with all the macros, right? And I know you can't find as many macros as you used to, so totally different situation. But if I was able to do another tank and, like I could do whatever I wanted and get whatever I wanted, I would definitely do macros again. That requires lighting that supports macros, right? If I was doing a tank without plants, without gorgonians, without anything that requires light, because seahorses don't. Most seahorse people don't even care about the light. Dan's tanks didn't even have lights; it was overhead light, right? But again, you can mess with their timetable and make them think it's a different time of day or a different season with lighting. And so if you're doing a tank without any of the live stuff that requires light, but you plan to use live rock, in that case, I would go the opposite direction and either not do lighting at all or do the most simplest, that isn't very bright. Because yes, I know people want these cool lights for pictures and stuff, but just in my circumstance, I like live rock in tanks, not live rock, but rock that I have killed and brought back to life. Not going to go into that whole topic, but recuring it and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
Rock that I've had for years that I have sitting in a tote or whatever. Um, that rock I like to use in tanks because I like aquascapes. But for instance, in my all-in-one, I just got a cheap light that I can control basically, and I think it cost me maybe $50. It's probably not the right spectrum for anything. I can do the red, white, blue, green stuff, and the cool looking things, but I've had a lot of problems with algae on the rocks because the light is there and there's nothing using it, right? So then algae starts to grow, bacteria starts to grow, da 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 da. So I think I would pay more attention to lighting, just depending on what you're trying to do. And so I know I've gone in every different direction with this conversation already, sorry. But to finally give you my true answer, if I was setting up tank, I would try to get macros. I would get lighting that was adequate for macros, depending on the macros. Different macros need different lighting. I would definitely do gorgonians and all of that stuff, research and invest in the lighting for them, and then spend the rest of the money on equipment and making sure the tank's set up right. That would be my key thing. I think too, and this is going to surprise you guys, because I have not, in all of the Seahorse tanks that I've kept, I only had one that was sanded. Only one, all of them. It was my reed-eye tank. And I had a lot of problems with that sanded tank. But I've learned a lot since I did that tank. And I've learned that, like for instance, you're supposed to wash and rinse the sand. I didn't know that back then. So that's probably why I had so many problems, right? And the lighting over it. Again, if you don't have things that are using that light and you have a bright light, it's going to cause problems in areas that have anything that's live, which is the whole tank, right? So it's if you're gonna do a fancy schmancy high light, you got to have stuff that uses it, or don't have any of the sand and rock and all that. Could go completely artificial. Um, and I know I'm jumping around again. So if it was my dream tank, I would do macros. I would invest in a good lighting. I would definitely have the sump that was already either built in or set to get set up for me to where I didn't have to figure anything out. I like the new cool ones. I think they're rather expensive, but I love the ones where there's compartments that literally do certain things. And
Mhm.
the only problem with those is you want the oversized skimmer. So there's got to be a space for, you don't want to take the factory skimmer for that sump. You want a bigger skimmer than
Mhm.
you can imagine. So I know I just went all over the place, but I know Zen's like, oh my God, what did you just say? I don't know. I know I tend to twirl. My brain goes 5 different directions at the same time. Sorry.
I
But
can't
it,
do that because to me, any hobby that I have, the hobby itself is only half of what I get out of it. The other half is
mm,
what I do to accomplish that hobby. In this
I
case,
get
here
it.
with the seahorses, uh, I want to do all the things myself because I'm getting that as much out of that as I am
Yeah.
to sit and watch the seahorses.
I think we're just exact polar opposites, Ray. Because I want that tank done for me, and I just want to concentrate on the seahorses. I want to make the tank pretty, decorate, whether it be with live stuff or, aquascaping with rock or, decorations or whatnot. That's what I enjoy. And then I enjoy interacting with the seahorses. I absolutely do not enjoy trying to figure out how to make my own skimmer or oh no, 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 no. Gives me a headache even considering.
I would pay a seahorse boarding stable. Yeah, like some people keep horses, but they keep them at a boarding stable, so they just go there and ride them, and somebody else does all the work.
Yep.
That's
With
the
respect to skimmers, if you don't have a sump that's big enough for a really large skimmer, just get a reactor because the reactor can be small and you can put carbon in it.
Mm.
Now, in time, the, the reactor is fairly cheap. and a skimmer can be awful expensive.
Mhm.
But the carbon for the reactor will be expensive over time because carbon's not cheap.
Mm.
So cost wise, you may save money as far
Mhm.
as the big outlay at to start with, but over a period of time, you're going to spend at least as much. The advantages can be done in a much smaller sump, and the carbon will actually remove some dissolved organics that a skimmer won't.
Hmm.
I didn't know that until we got searching for a test for dissolved organics, and
Right.
when I got involved with Randy Holmes Farley,
Yep.
that chemical scientist, um, but he said the carbon will remove even more of the dissolved organics than a skimmer will.
And see, when you say carbon, though, that kind of does make me nervous because there are like carbon to me. I just remember many stories where if you don't remember to replace it, then it can leach back out eventually. Am I saying that wrong? I feel like that's something I
Well,
remember.
I've seen things like that, but I've never had it happen to me, and that's and in my aquatic history, which stems back to the 1950s,
Wow.
uh, that's a long time, and I've never had a carbon problem.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, and you bringing that up made me think also of the Robert King chamber.
Mhm.
He actually, if you contact Robert King, he will design and make you a chamber that's suitable for the tank size, right? Because he sells them at like I think
Yeah,
10
they're
and 20
custom.
gallons, but you can get one. I think he made one for someone for a 300-gallon tank.
I have
Um,
2 that are 40-gallon in my 75-gallon tank. I've because I told him I wanted one for each corner of the tank, and he said, "How about I make you 2 40-gallon ones?" So
mhm.
that's what so yeah, you tell him what you want and he'll make it for you. I was just gonna show you if you can see on here. So this is my protein skimmer,
Okay.
and
Show us again because I made you
it's
big.
a 240 DC INSUP. Now it's too bright. You can't
Oh,
see it.
sorry.
Find
I
it.
see
Oh,
it.
here we
Yeah.
go. Although the words are backward. So I was just looking up the price because I couldn't remember what I paid for it, but they're about $300 each.
Mm.
So that's why I say when you've got $2,000 to spend on a system, it doesn't go as far as you would hope it would, unless you do it yourself like Ray.
Well, but I think I'm
Because a
trying to
lot
remember.
of fancy stuff's pretty darn expensive, and, like, you get yourself a drilled tank and a nice sump and a big protein skimmer and a chiller or whatever else you might need, and that 2,000 is gone real quick.
I know. Well, and I
And
hate to
like
put.
chillers cost like 500, 600 a piece.
Well,
You
but
know,
in that,
so
that's a good point. That's why the question is so hard to answer, and that's why, yeah, I saw Zen. You're gonna
it's
go
kind
back
of
and
like take care of your needs first
well,
and
hang
then
on.
go to fancy stuff.
Well, I was just gonna say, I know I go in 5 different directions, but it's because I'm trying to cover it all in one sentence, and that just doesn't work out. So I end up sounding
Yeah.
crazy. I am a little crazy, but the entire point is, it really does depend on where you're located.
Mhm.
What you want out of the tank, like the difference between Ray and I. He would not be happy if he wasn't seeing the um I can't think of the word, seeing the effects of his work, not
Uh-huh.
effects, seeing the being prideful that the tank's running right because he set it up right, right? That's part of it for
Yeah.
him. Whereas for me, I don't care about any of that. I want it set up, done, pretty, so that I can mess with
Yeah.
inside the tank. I can mess with the seahorses, right? It just depends on what you want. And then again with the chillers, I've never owned a chiller. I don't need
Yeah.
one. Where I live, I don't need that. So it just depends on where you are.
Yeah.
And
I
that would
have
eat up a lot
to
of money.
here.
Yeah.
It's so hot here in the summertime. If I didn't have the chillers, I'd really be fighting to keep the tank temps down.
Well, it works fine for me having air conditioning because I can't stand the heat.
Yeah, and see, if we
No,
run AC, that raises my electric bill like a couple $100 a month. The chillers
Yeah.
cost me about $50 to run. So
if I had a chiller on every Seahorse system that I had, I'd be paying a lot more
yeah,
in hydro for all those chillers, let alone the cost of the chillers themselves.
I could see that if you have a lot of tanks. I have 2 tanks, so for me it's not as bad. But yeah, it depends. Like you said, it depends on your situation,
Mhm.
where you live, what's the temperature in your house, all kinds of stuff
Well,
comes
and
into
that's the key point that I was trying to make is that what you really need to focus in on once you realize, once you're looking at, okay, I live here, so I'm going to have chillers, or I don't live here, so I don't need chillers, or
Mhm.
whatnot, is making sure the environment is suitable for the seahorses. That's the key because
Yeah.
you don't want to spend all this money on a tank and then the seahorses do poorly, right? So
Mhm.
I would say definitely just consider all the things we're talking about, like where you're located, if you need a chiller, blah 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 blah, what you want out of the tank, and then design it around that. I think Zen, you just need to jump in here. We need to decide what week you're going to jump in, and then we can literally go back and forth, and you can say, well, I want sand and gorgonians. I think I remember you saying that. Then we can focus in on that. And I won't be all over the place because I'll be focused on your actual question.
Mhm.
So let me know when we can have you in as a guest, and totally show people how, when you talk to us and you give us the specifics about what you want, we can help you hone in on the best things to buy for sure.
Mhm.
Um, Okay, and you think a chiller might be necessary? Let's see. You're in Houston. I think a chiller might be necessary. I already keep my house at 68, but the unheated tanks get up to 72, 73. 72, 73 is okay though.
Yeah, that's fine for them. I mean, in that case, if it does, like if there's a rare occasion where it is getting too hot, if that's a rare thing, there's ways to cool off the tanks, with fans
Yep,
and frozen
I'm still here.
water, 2-liter water bottles, and there's things that you can do now and then when you need to, if it's not a problem all the time.
Right. And I again, I would consider 68 to 72 swing not drastic. I think that's okay. I wouldn't be that worried about that. Um,
And if you have power outages, I would strongly consider a generator in your
mhm.
plant too. If you have chances of power outages, like I do, we have frequent power outages, sometimes for days. And without the generator, there'd be no way I could keep my tanks going, all the things that they need for survival.
Ray, did you have
I
generators?
thought I had one that I built, and I also have a commercial one that I bought.
Well, go figure. I'm so shocked that you built one. but
Well, I'm in the automotive
yeah.
trade, so we have these uh, uh, cars that have alternators on them that are putting out pretty good output. So all it had to do was hook up a, no, now I can't think of the name of it. It's basically it converts the DC power to AC. There's a word for it, and I can't get it out right now.
Well, I wouldn't know it anyway, so go ahead.
But
But you
um,
had
yeah,
generators,
like
one that you built, one that you bought.
yeah, I've hardly ever used
Mhm.
them. I didn't want to do it unless I knew that the power was going to be out. But I figure she's in Houston. I thought with all the power outage problems they had years ago, I thought they fixed everything and they don't have the outages
Well,
now.
that's another case where I think that really, well, let me say this for the record. Okay, for the record, I think everybody should have a generator. You just should.
Just
Right,
in
You just
case.
should.
inverter.
Even a little one, a little cheap one. I used to have just a little cheap one, and that was enough to keep the seahorse tanks going in an emergency situation.
Terry's tropical tank said it's called an inverter, Ray. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I took a rototiller motor that the rototiller was shot. It was my mother-in-law's, and her husband never looked after it. So when the rototiller went on it, I just took the motor and the frame and used it to mount the alternator and the inverter on it, and I had me a
Yeah, and
generator.
the one word I knew was alternator, and the only reason I know that is because I had to buy one for my car. You lost me, Ray. I do that, but no, I mean, I think it's cool when you guys do. I think it's great. Yeah, I don't want to have to figure that stuff out. And I'll be honest, the reason I was saying everybody should have a generator is because I believe it, but I don't. To be honest with you, my power never goes out. I've had my power go out once in the 10 years I've lived in my house, right? One time. And in that case, I had an air or a battery powered bubbler because I mean, and it wasn't out even long enough for us to lose the food in our fridge. Like we just don't have that problem. So should everyone have a generator? Should I have a generator? Yes, absolutely. But when you're looking at I've got this much money to spend, you just got to weigh it. You could lose everything without one. I had a friend though, a macro algae friend and a reef tank friend, who lost her entire tank because of a heater malfunction. Right?
Mm-hmm. Had that
Stuff
happen.
just happened, and I would absolutely love to have like an Neptune Apex controller, and have. In
Right.
my case, the reason I never invested in that kind of thing is because, like someone else was saying, I had literally 11 tanks. And I've heard now that there are ways to splice it to where it can control multiples, but at the time when I was looking at it, you couldn't. I literally would have had to buy one for each tank, and it was just unreasonable. There
Mhm.
was no way. So, um, anyways, I just think a
You
lot
can
depends on where
always
you're at.
add as you go. I mean, that's what I did. I didn't have everything from the very beginning. I had the basics, and then you add, the
Yeah.
longer you're in the hobby, you can add more things as you go along. So I think if you just concentrate on the most important things,
Well,
you
and
know,
she's got
in
a
the beginning.
specific question for us that I'm getting ready to read. But I agree with Holly completely. Another just last minute point I wanted to make is the one thing that I would suggest anyone that has the money to do so to do is backup, backup items, backup pump,
Mhm.
backup whatever, maybe not skimmer, but I mean backup pump, backup power head, whatever it is that helps your tank run, have a backup. Because in my reef tank, when my Jabeo wave maker went out, it like I had to wait on another one to get shipped. And it was like nothing happened, but I worried and something could have happened, right? Your pump, you
Mhm.
can't go without a pump. So I know, Zen, you probably already have backup because you have so many other tanks. But just for anybody watching in the future, I would say always think ahead, and when you can afford it, buy the backups of the main items that you use in your tank.
I had
And
to wait a few weeks for overflow boxes when my big acrylic tank split a seam. It had a
yeah.
built-in overflow.
Mhm.
And when I replaced the tank the same day, there's nothing where I live like that. Nobody has drilled tanks, overflow boxes, none of that. So I'm at Petco. I bought a 75-gallon for half price. I was lucky it was during their sale time. So I come home with this 75-gallon tank. That's their new home. But I didn't have any way to get the water to the sump. And nobody here, like I said, sells overflow boxes. So I had to order them online. It took a couple weeks to get here. So I had like emergency filtration. I had a
Yep.
canister filter from back in the old days that I set up. But yeah,
But yeah,
stuff.
I mean, even having that emergency canister filter, that's what I'm saying. Is
Yeah, it
I don't,
saved the
my
day.
basement's filled with crap. Everybody else in my family hates it, but I'm like, I might need to use that someday, right? And I would say Terry's Tropical Tank said backup for the wine chiller. Amen, sir. And Ray said I should ask Zen if she rents her husband out for setting up a system. Zen, do you rent out your husband for?
Mhm.
Because yeah, I hate the setup. If that's something you enjoy, cool. Um, but yeah, I wanted to get back to Zen's actual question. She said, I just really need to figure out the tank sizes because my hubby wants to build the standout so it can go in when we move all the other tanks around next month. So that's the most important now. So tank size. So obviously, Zen, my first question would be, how many seahorses do you want to keep? Because that's the key
Mhm.
factor in that. And then do you have space parameters? Like, is he saying, let's not go bigger than this wide? Because there are tanks that are wider versus long, right?
Mhm.
My reef tank was the 55, the long rectangle. My big grow out seahorse tank was the SCA 90, which is like a square cube. So do you have restrictions and how many seahorses? Um, Oh, no, Zen, I'm not in Canada. Zen said I think Canada might be beyond his typical range.
Oh, because of what Ray
Ray's in
was
Canada.
saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
Ray
gotcha,
was
gotcha.
saying, does she rent her husband out? If
Yeah.
you're
No, he meant for me, and I'm in
saying-
Indiana. I'm not that far. But
I don't think I need anybody to set
Yeah,
up for me.
right, Ray. I
Ray's
would I
good.
would rent Ray if I could. I would rent Ray if I could for sure. I bet he'd figure everything out. And Ray, I just wanted to tell you when Sean was walking past, he literally you were talking and saying something, and he said, "Wait a minute!" And that's when I paused my camera, and he was like, "He's from Canada, isn't he?" And I was like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He works in customs, so he gets like he's the guy that gets truck drivers over the border and back,
Yeah.
and he works with Canadians. And he was like, "Oh," he said, "Hey," I was like, "Oh."
Yeah.
So you gave yourself away. But anyways, okay. Zen said, I want 4 to 6, and I think 6 foot is probably the longest, but however high. So when we're
75 minimum.
75
I was
minimum,
going to
agreed.
say
Don't worry about
75.
the height. I never worry about the height of a tank. Well, I shouldn't say that. I've seen people get a real tall tank because they read that they need to be tall and then they can't reach in to do anything
That's
with
exactly what I was going to say. Think about I think you're planning on having sand, Zen, but you're still going to have to clean the sand. If you go bare bottom, even worse. You've got to be able to get a magic eraser down into that tank and scrub the bottom if you get algae on it or whatnot.
Mhm.
I recommend cleaning the sides and the bottom of a sandless tank, anyways, even if you don't have a problem. So make the height, make sure you can reach the bottom comfortably from the top, right?
Mhm.
in my in my
75 minimum, but you can go 90.
oh yeah, yeah, I agree.
90 would allow her to keep 8 seahorses that, if she really wanted to get up there. Once you have some, sometimes you want more than what you have.
Sure. and
But
and
and
where are you getting that where
Or
are you
other
getting that
stuff if
equation,
you
Ray?
want another fish in there or something. Just gives
sorry,
you more room, I think.
Exactly.
what was that?
Where are you getting that equation 8 and 90? Because
Uh,
go ahead.
Basically, 21 years of experience.
Okay, and I would agree with that. I would just say,
A
as
40-gallon sump.
okay, and I would just say, right, don't forget he's adding in the water volume of the sump. Because for anybody new, and Zen, I know you're not really new because you've been keeping fish for a long time, so you get it. But anybody new out there that watches this channel later, I just want to make sure we make very clear that if you're just going to do a pair of seahorses or something, you need at least 30 gallons, okay? You need 30 gallons per pair of seahorses. The reason that we're talking like 8 seahorses in a 90-gallon is because the more water volume we have, the less of a worry it is. And if you're adding a sump, that adds water volume, which makes it almost equal the same. But if you're going smaller, don't keep a pair of seahorses in less than 30 gallons. I just wanted to throw that out there. Um, and she said she's thinking about Terry. I'll ask your question in just a second. And Terry, when are you coming in here? I don't care if you have seahorses or not. We like to hear about everybody's tanks, so we need to get you in here sometime. I was actually thinking. Terry Zen said I was actually thinking in 90 with a 75-gallon sump, but I've wondered if that's overkill on the sump. I was just thinking they're roughly the same footprint. Thoughts before I give mine?
If she's got the room for it, go
Absolutely.
for it.
Holly?
Makes it much more
Mhm.
Yes.
forgiving, just unbelievably
Yeah,
more.
I'd say the more water volume you have, the better off you are. And you have a sump that big, you have room to add stuff to it, equipment and whatever else you might decide you want down the road.
Yep. And as Holly mentioned a minute ago, you get your seahorses in there. If you do a sanded tank, all of a sudden now you want some of the fish that or the cleanup crew, whatever, that
Other
can go with
stuff you want
seahorses.
in there. Yeah.
Yeah, like I wouldn't recommend adding clownfish or tanks, but you know, if you want to, what did you have, a goby or plenty or something?
I have a goby. I know a
Yeah,
lot of people do cardinals,
yeah,
and
like
those are
slow
cool.
moving,
Yeah,
non-aggressive.
there's different other creatures you can get that are fine with the seahorses, and you might want, not just seahorses. And yeah, the more water volume you have, the more forgiving it is, and the more you can do.
Or in the sand, I actually lied
So if
earlier. I
you
said
have the space, if you have the space and you have the money to do it, I mean, bigger to me is
bigger
better.
is
Just
always
make sure
better.
it's manageable for you, though. Like you were saying,
Water
Kelly,
changes.
make sure you can reach the bottom to clean it and all
Hmm.
that, especially when you're thinking about it, your husband's going to custom build you a stand. That's the situation I have too. And I have mine here in the Tiki Lounge is really low. My husband actually took a metal desk and cut the feet off of it,
Mm.
so it only stands, less than 2 feet high, I want to say. So the tank actually sits really low, but it makes it really easy for
To
me to
clean.
clean. I can reach all the way down in the bottom. I have a 55-gallon and it sits higher, and I have to get up on the couch arm to reach down to scrub the bottom for them.
Right. So, and I do have to get back to Terry's question. I'm not forgetting you, Terry. We will talk about the feeding. But Zen said, I wanted a mandarin and pajama cardinals, but I keep hearing iffy stuff to the contrary. So I don't know. Maybe
I
species only
had
was
a
better for people.
mandarin.
Hang on,
I
hang
love
on, hang
it.
on, hang on. Give me my turn real quick. And then I'll promise I'll let you say everything, Holly. But I wanted to back up just a second and say there's other. I lied to you guys earlier when I said I only had one sanded tank. I just remembered I had two because in one of my sanded tanks, I remember I really got into sanded critters. I ended up with a sand sifting starfish. He was awesome. Never had problems with the seahorses. He was so cool. I also got, I'm not going to remember the name now, but one of those really huge snails. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Um, Oh, it's going to drive me nuts now. I'll look it up as we're talking about something else. But this guy was ridiculous. I don't even think it's a snail, to be honest. I think it's called something else, but it looks
Like a
like a big.
conch or something like that.
I don't think it was. I'll look it up as we're talking about something else. But I got in when I had sand in my tank. I got into sanded creatures, and they were
Hmm.
fun. And
Hmm.
all I'm saying is backing up the point. The more water volume you have, the more manageable you can it is, and the more things that you can add. Just make sure that you can clean it, like Holly said, and make sure that you can figure out how to make that much water for water changes. For instance, because I only have two tanks now, I'm literally my RODI machine, it needs new filters. I'm lazy. For like a few months now, I've just been buying distilled water because it was easier and the cost was acceptable to me because I don't have huge tanks that need massive water changes. If I still had the reef set up and all the other tanks, there's no way I could pull that off. So just, keep in mind you've got to make enough water for the water changes. And now we'll get into the mandarin and such. So I really loved my species only tanks. I'm just going to throw that out there because that's what I wanted, right? I wanted to concentrate on the seahorses, not just for them to have fry, but like to really get into their interactions, make sure they weren't nervous about anything. So I was super cautious. Your best bet, I'm just going to throw this out here before Holly talks, is to do a species only tank. That is the safest bet. If that is not what you want, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's nothing wrong with wanting more than seahorses in a tank. And Holly is now going to tell you how she had no problems with it. Go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, when I started with a pair of seahorses, uh Watchman Goby, Mandarin, a cleanup crew. Um Eventually I got peppermint shrimp a little bit down the road. I've had a few things in with the seahorses and I never had any problems with any of them. Now I've seen you can actually get captive bred mandarins that will eat frozen mysis. Now, mine didn't start out eating frozen mysis, but she learned from the seahorses. She watched the seahorses eating and got curious and learned how to go to their dish and eat with them. So she started out on copepods, but eventually she was eating the frozen mysis too. And I've seen some of these dealers that are doing captive bred fish that I think are pretty safe as far as adding pathogens and things. They're aquaculture.
Biota.
They're not.
Biota does. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not straight from the ocean, so I think they're safer. And I never
Yep.
had any issues with any of my fish that I added. You just have to keep to, like I think we've talked about before, there's lists of what fish are safe, which are more risky than others. So you can kind of pick and choose, and most of the safest ones you'll be fine with. I
Yep.
haven't.
I'm looking it up right now. Ray, give us your opinion while I'm looking this up.
On what?
What is your opinion on, do you add
On
other
tank.
fish?
Well, it's a risk tolerance
Yes.
situation is the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to take the risk, then go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good basic answer. I found the link. I'll show you guys. And then you also asked about sexy shrimp. So again,
I don't,
go ahead, Ray.
I don't think sexy shrimp will work
Why?
out. And I can't remember all about it, but I think if you go to
I'm
the
going. That's where I'm
seahorse.org
taking you.
tank mate,
Mhm.
I think they're listed high risk.
Okay, we're gonna
Now, with my memory, I might be wrong because of my memory situation.
we're
but
gonna look it up right now. I'm gonna
I
share that
know the
screen right now.
cleaner shrimp you can't do because they like to get on them
Yes,
and
anything
stress
that
them out.
and that I want to do an even better, a more updated guide. Guys, I just don't have the time. So the seahorse.org guide is really good. I'm going to show it to you in 10 seconds. But as Holly said, like anything that's going to get on them, or pinch
Mhm.
them or sting them or swim really fast around them or gobble up all the food before they can get to it,
Yeah.
that's the
Mhm.
kind of thing you don't want. So here is, first of all, um, I'm not great at this, so let's see. So I really think it was a conch. I found a picture. Can you guys see what I'm sharing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it was because it's the one that literally. Okay, actually, maybe Terry's Reef can help me, or anybody else that's on here. It's the snail that literally, when he makes a move, his shell goes klump, like it. You know, I can't hear you guys now. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, anybody know what I'm talking about? It's the big,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, big snail, like this big. And
Yeah.
people don't want them in a reef tank because
They
they do
knock
this
stuff
clunk.
over.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
anyways, I loved him in my seahorse tank because I had everything and nothing for him to knock over. And he didn't bug the They thought he was cool. And it does just depend. All right, let me share the seahorse.org
Yeah.
now.
I want to
Okay,
say Heather had
sexy
one
shrimp, red
that
level
used to
0.
ride on it. They'd hitch on and go for a ride on her conch.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, tank mate guide is Kevin and Renee. These are both really excellent Seahorse people. I know Kevin, I don't know Renee, but it explains a lot, and then it tells you 0 represents close to no risk, all the way up to 4, there's no business in a Seahorse tank. And then it lists everything. I
Yeah,
will
and you can
provide
look
this link,
at them.
but
Sexy shrimp or
I'm gonna
zero.
look for sexy shrimp. Where's shrimp? Here, we're gonna go into shrimp. All right. And sexy shrimp is a threat level 0. So you were wrong, Ray. But I
Yep.
would say with sexy shrimp, it depends on your seahorses. My seahorses were buddies with my peppermint shrimp, which are level 1, but I had them.
Oh yeah,
And they
mine
were
were
buddies
too.
with them, and they were friends, and everything was great. In Lucy Arowanas tanks, they would eat them. The
They ate them. I
seahorses
heard
would eat any peppermint shrimp, any sexy shrimp, any shrimp she added, they would go eat. So I think it
that.
depends
You're
on.
It's the same problem.
But this is a great site, as you can see. It tells you, it has pictures, it shows you exactly, what
hmm
level they are. Let's see what they say about clownfish, though. I'm curious. See, they're all 4. No clownfish. No,
Yeah.
one 3, but no clownfish. I agree with that. I know people have gotten away with it. I would never advise clownfish. My clownfish were assholes. They bit my fingers. But even Antheus, right? No go. It's a level 3. You're really risking it because the Antheus are, kind of paranoid fish, and then the seahorses are paranoid fish. And the
They freak
Antheus
each
swim
other
around
out.
real. Yeah, really. The Antheus swim around in a school really fast all over the tank. That will stress those seahorses
Yeah,
out for sure.
yeah,
They're as
Um,
bad as having damsels.
you said what?
yeah,
They're as bad as having
yeah,
damsels.
Yeah, let's see what they say about damsels.
yeah.
4,
Would
4.
be
Don't put a
that. Yeah.
damsel. I was just looking to see what other things they say are 1s. Angler and frogfish. Nope, can't have those. I wouldn't think. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But I mean,
The
like a
cardinal
dartfish.
fish will be good. Like if you look up
I'm
cardinals, I think.
I'm actually surprised they're saying that a dartfish is level 1. Well, I guess dartfish, they call them dartfish or firefish, but they don't move around a lot, right?
Do
Those
they
are
act like
chill.
gobies? Don't they like hide
Yeah.
in a cave? That's probably why. I mean, that's what my
Okay.
goby does. He has his space and he's kind of territorial about it, but he
Hmm.
doesn't hurt the seahorses. And I've had him as long as the seahorses, actually a little bit longer, and they all work together.
And this is very clear that dragonets are fine. The
hmm
fear with dragonets is absolutely recommend taking Holly's advice and buying a captive bred dragonet, because the only fear with any of these fish are that you're adding a wild caught fish that will carry in,
Yeah,
bacteria, parasites, etc., that will then affect the seahorses. If you're buying captive bred, you should not run into those problems. So things are a lot different than, say, like if Cheryl was in here right now, she'd be saying nothing, only seahorses. But that's because back when she was doing seahorses, everything was wild caught, right?
yeah,
So that was the danger. Now you can buy, captive bred most of these things, and then you're not putting that risk there. Cardinal
yeah. I
fish,
would definitely invest in that if you can find a good source for captive bred. You know that are safe. I would definitely do that. You're probably fine, I would say, with fish that are considered safe for the seahorses, like a 0 or a 1
yeah.
on on this list, and find a captive breeder, find a good source for them, and you'll probably be okay.
I'm curious about chromis. Yep, nope, no chromis, because they're too fast. I don't know the word. They're too flirty.
Too energetic.
Yeah, too energetic. You need slow moving stuff that'll just chill, not be dangerous. What about a hawkfish? They're kind of risky.
Kind of on the
Like
edge.
it's not something
Yeah.
I would put in, but it's a really good site. They've done a really good job on it. And I'm curious what they say about pipefish. See, and they're saying you can mix with pipefish. Again, guys, here's the disconnect. When you go and you hear people like Cheryl and even me or Dan or whoever say, absolutely do not mix seahorses with pipefish. It's the worst thing you can do. And that is because if you take a captive bred seahorse and a wild caught pipefish and put them in the same tank, the seahorse is even more likely to have trouble because they're of the same family.
Mm-hmm.
So so let's say, and I'm using totally made up words here. These are not real things, okay? But I'm just giving a very generic example. Say you have a seahorse that's immunity and their makeup allows them to deal with Vibrio, okay? Then you have a clownfish that's immunity and makeup allows them to deal with something else, but they carry this mono, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so this mono, if the seahorse is in the same tank as the clownfish and it gets mono, that's bad, right? But let's say a pipefish and a seahorse both can handle Vibrio, but they can't handle disease C, bacteria C, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this captive bred seahorse has never been exposed to it. And then here comes Mr. Wild Caught Pipefish that can handle C because he's lived in it in the ocean. He brings it in the tank. That's even worse for the seahorse because they're in the same family. I know I didn't explain that very well,
Mm-hmm.
but bottom line is go captive bred, you will have less risk.
Yeah.
That's it. and and I know I'm not good at explaining that stuff. Sorry, but and here's the link. I will share it, and I'll share it afterwards in the comments. Try to.
And
Here's
yeah,
the
I
link.
think for Zen Gender, most sites I found look different on your cell phone than they do on the computer. So that's probably
They
why
do.
it looks different. If you're on your phone, it'll look different.
In fact, funny enough, when I get on the seahorse.org site on my phone, if you have an iPhone, this might be happening to you.
Mm.
It won't scroll down. You
Oh,
try to scroll down, and it jumps back
I
up. And
haven't tried it, but
I don't know why, but if that's happening, just jump on a
some
computer. It's
sites, yeah,
easier.
I have noticed that though. Some sites are not cell phone friendly. I have an
Right.
iPhone, and yeah, I run into weird stuff too.
And Younga Rector, sorry, says I have a purple firefish. She hangs out below the seahorse feeding station. No issues with the seahorses.
Yeah.
See, I really do think that that's the other part of is you have to decide what you're willing to risk, right? And then
Hmm.
maybe check the guide to make sure you're not making a disastrous mistake. But if you're in that
Hmm.
iffy zone, then you have to decide do it if that's what I want in my tank, that's what I want in my tank. You try it out and sometimes it just works, right? I mean,
Sometimes it
sometimes it
does.
just
Fish
works.
are individuals. Fish are individuals. I found. They'll adjust personalities. Now, what's interesting about my goby, because I've had the goby as long as I've had the seahorses, my goby thinks it's a seahorse. He eats from the turkey baster and eats the frozen mysis, and that's all he wants to eat. I had like in some shipment of something, I got some free marine pellets. And so I put some in the turkey baster the other day and tried to give it to my goby to say, hey, well, you want to eat some real fish food like all my other fish, like my freshwater fish, eat, pellets. It would be so much easier. And the goby didn't know what to do with the pellets.
How funny. How funny.
I was
Yeah, they
hoping,
have
like, if I put
personalities.
it in the turkey baster, it'll know it's food, right? So it came like darting out after the pellets, but it wouldn't eat them. Like the pellets went on the ground, and the goby, which they're supposed to like sift through sand, I think, is part of their eating.
Yep.
It's like the darn seahorses. If the food gets to the ground, it doesn't want to eat it. And I'm like, you're a goby, you're not a seahorse. Can you eat like a fish? So my goby has become high maintenance because of the seahorses, because it watches how the seahorses eat and it
And get
wants
babied.
that
Yep.
way.
Yep. I do remind me before we end for tonight. I want to talk about food. Just remind me to ask about food. But Younga, am I saying that right? I'm sorry. Younga Rector, am I saying that right? Let me know. Said Alyssa Seahorse Savvy has Of course, captive bred seahorses, but also captive bred pipefish. There you go. Easy
Mhm.
solve right there. If you want pipefish in your seahorse tank, just buy from her. Buy captive bred, because that's your safest bet. You're
Mhm.
always going to find someone who says, this worked in my tank. I have clownfish in with seahorses. And my answer to that is good for you. Awesome. Still, I would not advise it. And let's see how you're doing in a year or two, because clownfish, at least in my experience, went from these docile, little, lovely, nice, ooh, so cute, to monsters who, like, if I put my hand in the tank, were attacking me. And I can't imagine having them with seahorses. And I've just heard a lot of horror stories.
I've heard
Um,
stories, yeah.
I'm not sure about the mom. It's dirty now. I'm trying to figure it out. Oh
Yeah,
no,
the
that was
Dobie, yeah,
Holly.
that hits the floor. Yeah. They
Well,
all
and I
think
can't say for that I literally have a video on the 3 best ways to feed seahorses. It does include, broadcast, target, and dish, including turkey baster as brought, as focused. And there are different ways. If you want a lower maintenance seahorse tank, like Cheryl would never like cater to the seahorses, and Dan would
right.
never be like, I'm going to make this special dish for this special seahorse. It depends on your situation. Like me and
Mhm.
Holly do that kind of thing because these are our seahorses and they're our little family, and we don't want to lose a single one of them, and they're named and whatever. If you're a different kind of person and you have a tank of many seahorses and they're not named, and you broadcast feed, nothing wrong with that either. And they probably wouldn't expect as much. So just
Mhm.
throwing that out there. But what was Terry's question about? Did you guys have anything else to say about that?
No.
Okay. Terry wanted to know, do you do you have to think about food density when feeding, since horses are pretty slow? Large would need more food. Yes, plus filters to remove the unate stuff.
Let me see.
I Ray, I think you
I
answered it there.
remove the uneaten stuff. I suck it out, I siphon it out. And like we were talking about, I use dishes. So it's not a matter of density. It's like Ray says, more about how much they'll eat
Uh-huh.
in a few minutes. So, and I've had them, the seahorses, for a while. So I figured out, after a while about how much they'll eat for how many seahorses. And
What'd you
that's
come
about
up with?
what I do.
I have to correct that statement that you made on my behalf.
Oh,
It's not a case of how much they will eat. It's how much they will eat in 12 to 15 minutes because
okay.
Mhm,
they will eat for longer. The problem
mhm,
is that if they're eating for a longer period of time, the digestive tract that they have without any stomach will end up pushing the food through their digestive tract even faster so that that rudimentary system cannot remove the nutrient from the
mhm.
food sufficiently, and you're going to end up with that the feces coming out there more nutrient laden than before.
I've
And
I've actually I've actually seen that in fry, where if I
yeah,
put too
Mhm,
much live artemia in, I will
mhm,
see the little fry up, and then I
mhm.
literally have a video of him expelling, pooping. I'm saying pooping,
Pooping,
pooping
yeah,
live
alive
brine
food.
shrimp. Yes, and
That's
it's still
crazy.
alive, so he got
I have
nothing
never
from that
seen
eating.
that.
But also, Ray, I'm glad you made that point. Also,
Mhm,
Holly and I have talked about this on the side too,
mhm,
and there is a fine line on what you're willing to accept. But also, when we're talking about frozen mysis, like my example was just a live food.
mhm,
In frozen mysis, it does, if it's ground or in a dish
mhm,
for 30 minutes, it's
mhm,
getting bacteria, right? It's
yep,
mhm,
going bad. Is that
mhm,
right?
yep.
mhm,
That's why you want to feed them only what they're going to eat in that time period. You'll have
mhm,
very little left over, and usually, if you've got your tank set up correctly, it's either going to get picked up by your mechanical filtration or it's going to settle in one particular area that you can
mhm.
look and see, and if there is any there, you can get it out.
Or if you have like
Mhm.
Holly, it's in a
I
dish,
just
you can
siphon
just
it
siphon
out.
it out. Right.
Yeah.
And with the timing period, Ray, I'm just curious, do you think that if someone, not on purpose, maybe lazy like me, not saying I did this ever, but if they left the food too long for whatever reason, for on multiple occasions, do you think that those seahorses get used to thinking they have more time to eat? Because you're saying what they can eat in 10 to 15 minutes. But if someone lets them eat for half hour, say, then do they not eat as fast because they don't think they have to?
No, they would get to a point where they might feel that way, but if you're feeding them that long, you're not doing them any favors and you're not doing your tank any favors. The main
I agree.
reason you're concerned about any food that's left in there for any length of time, or uh, like um, or the feces itself coming out more nutrient laden, is that in time it's going to build up dissolved organics in the tank.
Yeah.
And because we cannot test for dissolved organics, and because every single test that you do have access to can show good and DO can be going downhill, then you want to try and eliminate any chances of that DO from increasing. So by limiting the amount of food that's coming out or that you're feeding them, you're going to have
Hmm.
less in the tank to decay and provide that DO. And you're also going to have less nutrients in the feces that are coming out that are going to contribute to that DO.
Absolutely. And that is why we all say, yeah, you can feed them just twice a day, but with seahorses, that's one of the considerations when you're getting ready to do seahorses is you really need to feed them 3 to 4 times a day. And that's because you're feeding them for smaller amounts of time. You're not just I like to broadcast feed, but it's still only for 10 to 15 minutes, right? It's not I turn the feeder off. It gives me 10 minutes. The food goes flying. They go gobble it all up. Whatever is left in my bigger tanks, I just turn, I don't even turn. I have the Javeo thing that turns it back on for me after 10 minutes, and the food goes flying again and gets sucked up into the filtration. In my smaller tanks, like what Holly's talking about, I don't have the sump and I don't want all that food in the sock. And so I do turn off the system, feed them. They're quite spoiled, so they don't like eating off the floor. So I often have to use a turkey baster to blow it back into the water column. We've talked multiple times about maybe adding a little power head or something to keep it circulating. I haven't gotten around to it, but I will for you guys to let you know how it goes. But in the meantime, when they are done, I just use a turkey baster to suck anything up. That's my how I do it in my smaller tank.
Some people
I would
find
go
that
ahead.
it's a problem to feed so many times in a day. But
Okay.
if you can feed at least twice a day, then you should be able to do four, because if as long as you can separate two feedings by half to 3/4 of an hour, that gives time for the nutrient to be removed as much as possible in that digestive tract before the feces are passed out. And so half an hour, 3/4 of an hour later, you can feed them another feeding again. So you can get up in the morning and feed them once, and then maybe before you head off to work, feed them another time. Then when you come home from work, feed them a third time, and before you go to bed, feed them a fourth time.
I hear you, and I've heard you say that before, but I will say when I feed my seahorses, maybe I do feed too much. Maybe I shouldn't have to suck any up. But when I feed my seahorses, if I did this before I went, sorry, let me turn my camera on. I did this before I went on vacation because I had it set up to where I had a seahorse sitter coming the following day, but I was leaving in the morning and that was going to be it for that day. And I know that that's not ideal, but not going to kill them, right? So I fed them as soon as I got up, and my whole family's rushing me to get out the door. And I'm like, well, hey, just Joe, I got to feed the seahorses again, right? And so I waited, like after I turned everything back on, I kind of stalled around and I waited about half hour. And then I tried to feed them again, and they were not interested at all. Is that because you think
They would
I've
get
got them on a schedule?
they would get used to it in time. One with the feeding
So it's
protocol.
because they're used to eating at certain times a
Yeah,
day, and that was not what they expected.
yeah.
They didn't know what to do. Okay. Okay.
Mine are like
So
that. If I try to feed them at an unusual time that's like in between the times that I normally feed them, they don't want to eat sometimes. They're like, it's It's not time.
Right. Which is crazy because seahorses are supposed to eat constantly. You're like,
No, I
get
do
over
that
here.
like on Wednesdays, like today, because I'm so busy with tank cleaning day. I'm so busy getting that done and all the other stuff I have to do that they get fed twice. But
Hmm.
they miss lunch and they get an early dinner, you might
Dinner.
say. But like today, I had a bunch of stuff I was doing before Wine Wednesday. So I ended up feeding them at an earlier time than normal. And the Dandy and Sadie were looking at me like, it's not time to.
What are you doing?
Dandy ate. Now, Dandy's funny. He'll eat every time I feed him. He
Right.
always makes the
Some will.
effort. He always makes the effort because he has a hard time eating. So anytime there's food, he'll at least try to eat some of it. And Sadie, she'll chow down. She'll eat a whole lot of food, but sometimes she's eaten enough to where she doesn't want to eat the next meal. You know, she'll make decisions. Now the ones that I broadcast feed in this room, they'll pretty much eat just about every time that I feed them, but they
Hmm.
might eat more than other times. Like if I feed them at a time that's not normal for them, they won't want to eat as much. They won't be as
Hmm.
interested as if it's their normal meal time,
Well,
but
but
they'll always.
this just goes to show though
They're
that
all different.
well, not only are they all different, but you can train them, right?
Yeah.
So if
Mhm.
you, I mean, you can absolutely get your seahorses on your schedule to where, like, as Ray said, if you
Yeah.
start them off right off the bat, where they understand they're going to get a little feeding, then a little feeding, then go all
Mhm.
day, and then a little feeding and a little feeding, they'll get used to it and they'll eat it up, right? It just, you get
Mhm.
them on a schedule. Go ahead, Ray. You were going to say all day grazing.
Uh,
You said all day
oh,
grazing for seahorses is natural, but they
Mhm.
don't have the density and quantities
yeah, the
given to them.
seahorses in the wild, they graze all day long,
Right.
Yep.
but they don't have a bunch. They'll have one here, another one come by,
Yeah.
maybe a minute later, or maybe even 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's
They have to
altogether
hunt.
different ballgame.
Right. Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's why it's hard. You read about seahorses online and they're talking about wild seahorses, and that's not the same. Totally agree.
Mhm.
Um, what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say that's one of the points I made in the feeding video. You guys should check out the videos. They're very old, but most of it's still very adequate. And I would say brand new seahorses, you have to train them. You have to get them used to you and used to the tank.
Mhm.
When I get seahorses right away, I don't try to feed them right the second they get in the tank because they're not going to eat it. They don't know where they're at. They don't know what's going on. I have had seahorses eat right away, but normally no. So I don't even try anymore. If I get new seahorses, they're not going to eat until later that night or whatever when they've gotten a minute to get accustomed to the tank. Also, I don't think I've ever had any seahorses ever, any species, that would eat the second I turn the light on. They need a minute to like wake up, get, okay.
Mhm.
I have been in a rush before and I've been like, oh shit, I'm running late. Oh no, my camera's falling. Sorry guys if I start
Mhm.
toppling over here. But I've been late, been rushing, been like, okay, slap the light on, throw the food in, and they're like,
They take a while to wake up.
what? Yeah, I mean, like me in the morning. I
Yeah,
need my
yeah.
coffee first, right?
Well, I've
So,
noticed, see, I have one tank in here in this room. It's like a lounge area, my little bar. So I don't hang out in here. I'm not in here in the morning. I have another tank in my living room. Now, in the living room, we get up a couple hours before I even turn on lights for the seahorses and feed them, but there's ambient light from the room. So they can see that the house is up, we're moving around. They start slowly waking up. And then I have a feature on my lighting that's dawn. I can click that on, and it takes 15 minutes to give them a sunrise. And when
mm,
I turn that on and the lighting's low in the tank, they're ready to eat. They go to their dishes, they're ready to eat. They're like, Mom, okay, lights are coming on. It's time for breakfast. Let's get going. Now, in this room, it's not like that. And I don't have that kind of lighting in here. So, what happens is I turn on their light and then I feed the other tank first, and that gives them a few minutes to start waking up because I come in and my seahorses are weird. They like to sleep laying down. So when I come in this room to feed these guys, everybody's laying down at first when I first turn on that light, and then they start waking up and sitting up and going to the places they want to sit to eat.
Hmm.
And it takes them a while. They're like people waking up slowly. They're like, "Where's my coffee?"
Right. Right.
Because they didn't get that slow wake up time that my other tank gets. They slowly wake up. These ones, it's more sudden.
Bonnie said she makes a sound of her freshwater fish tank, and they come up when they hear the tap of the tank. Wow. I mean, and I've heard people use the
I
clicker.
use
Yeah.
clicker training. I've
Yep.
clicker trained my seahorses, and that's so that I can get their attention. Like if somebody's spacing out in the back of the tank and I want to feed them. And my display tank, the ones in the living room, before I feed them each time, I do the dog clicker,
Mm-hmm.
and they do notice it's a signal. Another thing, they know visual too. They know that turkey baster.
Yes.
I
Yes.
can show them the turkey baster, click the clicker, and they know it's
I
time to.
feel like I've always heard though it's really bad to tap on a tank. Doesn't it like bother
I don't
hurt the
tap.
fish
No, it's.
ears?
Have you ever used a clicker training with a
Yeah,
dog?
yeah. I know what you're
Okay,
saying.
so
I
it's
just
that. So
yeah.
it's not tapping on the glass, but you're holding it and you go, it's like snapping your fingers,
Well, in
but
Bonnie's case
loud.
too. Well, in Bonnie's case too, she's talking about she's trained them to come to a tap versus some kid going, on a
Yeah,
tank. That's different.
yeah.
Bonnie also, Ray, I wanted to give you a chance because you were saying something about any filter material needs frequent cleaning before decay sets in. What was your point on that? I wanted to make sure you made it.
Well, um, any filter pad, in my opinion, should be cleaned at least twice a week.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's before the decay sets in. That's why, for me personally, being lazy, I would not use a canister filter on a seahorse tank. Being lazy, I
They're a
uh,
lot of work.
put off doing
Yeah.
the cleaning of that canister because it's a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, my DO levels are going to increase.
Yep.
And it may take 6 months, may take longer, or it could be shorter. Because I can't measure it, I don't know.
Hmm.
But sooner or later, it's going to happen. So I won't use a canister on any seahorse tank. It's fine on when I had reef tanks and that kind of thing,
Yep.
fish onlys, but not on a seahorse tank for people that can find themselves being lazy at times.
Sure. And Ray keeps bringing up DO, which is dissolved organics,
Hmm.
and I will 100% back him up. We've looked at this stuff and tried to figure out ways to test it, and there just is no way. And all we know, he talked to Randy Holmes Farley, and this is serious. This is what does go wrong in most seahorse tanks that have problems. It's buildup
Hmm.
that you can't see, that you don't even realize, and it's just because you're not doing adequate water changes or don't have adequate filtration, or you're letting your pads, the stuff in the pads decay, and everything that he's saying. Like with my Robert King chamber, I take it out. I don't change the media every time I do a water change, but I do swish the sponge, and try to clear the sponge because, any buildup is dangerous for a seahorse tank. It's definitely true. So I just wanted to go ahead.
We don't know absolutely for sure that it's the DO that is the problem, but we do know that when DO is elevated as it goes up, we definitely have problems that we run into.
Right.
So if it's not the DO, it's something else that maybe we don't understand what it is just yet, but it's associated with that DO.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to assume that it's either DO or something that
Right. It doesn't
uh,
really matter if
happened with
we're
that.
if we it doesn't really matter if we're right that it's DO, because the bottom line is the things you do to prevent the buildup of dissolved organics
Yeah,
will solve the problem either way.
that's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I just wanted to back you up on that because, I mean, he brings it up a lot because it's really important. And that's the key to a successful seahorse tank is keeping it clean, keeping those organics low because you can't see them. It's not like algae that you can see. It's like buildup that you don't ever see. And then your seahorses get sick and you don't know why. Again, more water volume, better equipment, water changes, that stuff resolves this, right? So that's why, again, going back to Zen, go bigger if you can, absolutely. And you
Mm.
never know what you're going to want to do down the line.
Yeah,
Also,
it just gives you like more room for
for
error,
error,
I would say.
for
You
error,
know,
yeah, more room to
gives
make
them a better
mistakes.
chance.
Yes. And Bonnie wanted to know, are starfish good with seahorses? Anybody got a thought?
I would say
Some
it
yes,
depends on the starfish. Like you were saying, I think the sand sifting ones are
yeah,
safe,
sand
like
fishing are
Linkia,
okay.
like blue Linkia, that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, Linkia won't survive in a seahorse tank for long because it doesn't have the biofilm that they need to feed on.
Gotcha. Interestingly
People
enough,
buy them, and so after a long period of time, they die. But it's because they've been dying all along, and it just takes them a long time to die.
I see. Yeah, I've heard
yeah,
of people keeping those, but yeah, I know some starfish are not good in a seahorse tank, but
I
I think
think I
there's some
think
that
the
are.
red. So this is seahorse.org again,
There
and
we go.
they do say that the Linkia is okay, but
Hmm.
again, as Ray said, maybe it's not okay for the Linkia, right? I mean, like
Yeah,
Right.
they're not
yeah.
going into details. Sand
I
sifting is
think
absolutely
starfish,
fine.
aren't they kind of hard to keep anyway? Don't they need like more special
Well, they need the film, like Ray just said. They need their food.
perimeters?
Yeah.
Well, the Lincoln
They're
need the film. Others,
sensitive.
there's others that don't. Like your serpents and that, they'll eat pretty well anything. But if they're hungry, they'll go after fish too.
Well, I got a point to make about starfish in just a second, but I'm curious because this says the red knob sea star is a 4, and I've also heard that the chocolate chip starfish is a
Yeah, anything
no-go.
that's not,
And is that because they eat, oh, it doesn't say, darn it. Is that
yeah,
because well,
they'll eat them. They'll latch on and eat them.
that's what my point I was gonna make is that what you do need to be careful, like I always pronounce this wrong. Is it Esternia? The white
Asterina.
That's
Estrella.
the
That's it. The little Estrella stars that you find in a tank, you don't know how they got there. The little white ones that
Mhm.
are all over your glass, and you're like, oh, they're cleaning the algae. They will too. You have to remember that seahorses will grow
They'll eat
algae
them
upon
too.
themselves, and that little starfish will crawl right up on a sleeping seahorse, and he thinks he's eating the algae, but he'll
He'll
end
eat
up
the
eating the
skin.
skin. And
Yeah,
yeah, we've
I've
had
heard
many cases of people that came and said, my seahorse has literally an eaten hole in its side. And we end up figuring out
happen.
that it was the Estrella snail. So, or stars, excuse me. So just, again, do your research. I loved my sand sifting starfish. It was amazing, but they're big and they're not after algae. They're not after the seahorses.
And
Whereas,
seahorse skin, even though they have those bony plates, their skin is very soft.
right,
I pet Dandy the other day. He looked like he might be stuck somewhere. So I went to check. I nudged his tail and he sat up. I thought he was stuck in the crook of a
gotcha.
hip, but he wasn't. He was just sitting there resting. So he sat up and I'm like, "Oh, you're okay." So I gently pet him and he let me pet him. and his skin was like velvet. It reminded me of like the antlers on a deer when they get that velvet.
Mm-hmm.
It was so he was so soft, like really
Mm-hmm.
soft, velvety skin. But yeah, they're hard, crunchy plates underneath that skin,
Yeah.
but their skin is so
I
soft.
was
I
gonna
I was
say my
surprised.
seahorses do not want pet. Do not they no, don't touch me. They're like, no,
No.
don't touch me. And the only time I've ever had to is to do like a pouch evac, and they do not like it.
Yeah,
And
normally I
and
don't
it's the
handle them
weirdest, it's
unless
the
I have
weirdest.
to.
Oh, I'm not saying you do, Holly, but it's the weirdest feeling in the world if you are handling them because you have to for some reason,
Mhm.
because that bone crunching that she's talking about, it's like vibration. You can feel it. You're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? But Ray, you look like you want to say
They
something.
click.
Yeah, one of my dogs here is driving me nuts and
Oh,
wants some attention, so I'm going to have to call it.
no,
Uh-oh.
take care of the dogs. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's getting late anyways. Thank you so much for coming and sharing all your expertise, Ray.
Yes,
Okay, take care.
for sure.
See you next
Have a
week.
good night.
And you guys, actually, I unless Holly has any, and Holly's like in the dark. She's
Lost
here but
my
not.
light. Yeah,
Uh-oh.
there's some light. My
Oh,
tank
you
light went
guys,
out for the night.
totally left field, but and I'm behind the game. I know this is old to many people, but I finally installed Alexa light bulbs in my house. I freaking love it. I can say I'm not going to do it because it'll happen, but I can tell my lights to turn off. That is so cool. I'm so old. I know. But anyways, we need that
I
for
don't have
Thanksgiving.
those yet.
No, actually go if you are good at tech, or you have Alexa, or you have Apex Systems or whatever, go to Reef Dude's YouTube channel and just search, and I can't tell you the exact one, but I think he did a live stream, and I know he's done videos. He has his system set up, his reef tank set up to where he can say, I don't know if it's Alexa or some other system, but he can
But
literally get on his phone and be like, turn on the water change, or turn on the auto top off, or turn on the lights. And I mean, it's on his phone. That is so cool to me. I want to do that. That's another thing I would invest in if I could, because I think it's so cool. But
I
with a
want
reef
one
tank,
that
it's
I
more
can
important.
say, "Feed the seahorses."
Yeah. I mean, really. Well, and I know I'm jumping back and
Right?
forth, but that's another thing that I'm going to go back to if I get in a place where I really am ready for fry again, is I'm going to go back to the feeding of live feeds, because I think that is a key too. That that I told you to remind me to talk about food, and now Ray's gone. That's all right.
Mhm.
I have noticed lately that the frozen mysis that I've been buying, and I know we've talked about this before,
Mhm.
and I know that it can be seasonal or whatnot, but a lot of it, I used to have problems with tiny pieces, and the seahorses won't eat tiny pieces of my frozen mysis that are, that have been smushed up or whatever. They won't eat them, so they're just a waste. They're just adding to organics if I can't find them and suck them out. And we figured out that back then my the netting was too small, so all those pieces were staying in the netting and being fed in the tank. I got a better net.
Mhm.
I'm still now having the problem again
I was
where
gonna
I'm
say
getting these
now is
small
winter
pieces.
harvest though, because I've noticed in my hikari, they're really tiny right now. The
So it's
pieces
just
that are
because of the
the
time.
pieces that are in there. So now your strainer might be too big, and they all
Well,
might
no,
be falling through.
I'm still getting all these tiny pieces. It's just so frustrating because I'm using the net, shaking it around, and it's my seahorses will not touch them. If they're
Mine are
just a little
used
teeny
to them
piece,
now. Everybody's getting well, like I said before, Dandy's turning 5 now. Everybody else is on their way to 4 years old, and they just had really big food. Like about a month ago, the last pack I had was nice big pieces of mysis.
mm,
And this next pack I just opened, it's winter harvest, so they're all tiny. But
mm-hmm.
they'll still eat them. But when I first switched over, they had this look like, oh crap.
What is that?
But
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, we remember. So then they started eating them. Whereas the first time that happened when the seahorses were young and, the first time getting winter harvest, they were devastated.
I get it. I
Now
am
they're like,
going
"Oh,
to.
it's winter. We get crap food
Right.
this time of year."
Well, I think Holly, you and I might give our seahorses a little bit too much credit for understanding things, but I don't disagree with you. But I'm going to do a video when we're done. I know I always say that, but I actually have to feed them when we're done here because I
Mhm.
didn't feed them before. So I'm going to do a video and show you this food because I'm just so like this is no good. I mean,
Mhm.
it's you've got they'll eat small pieces of mices. They won't eat pieces of mices,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
When it's like just a little, it doesn't even look like a
Tiny.
shrimp, it doesn't look like
Yeah.
anything. They're not going to eat it, and it's just waste. And I'm just
Yeah.
really frustrated. So maybe it's the time of
Mind
year.
your piggy
I
about
will
it.
I'm actually going to go tomorrow too. I'm off work for once and going to go and buy a new couple packs. And I'm going to try a couple different, I may even try a couple different brands just to
Mhm.
see if it makes any difference because, and I may buy a net with bigger netting because it's just, I'll show you guys in the video. Watch on the Facebook page. I'll probably post it on YouTube
Mhm.
too, actually. But it's just really frustrating to see all that waste and know that it's just adding to the tank's organics. And
Look at the
I
little
don't know how to fix
kitchen
it.
strainers. That's what I use.
Yeah.
And just go to
Okay.
Walmart or somewhere and go to the kitchen department and look at the little sizes, the little handheld ones. Or I've
Yep.
got one, my favorite one, I actually found in a thrift store for like 25 cents. Yeah, in
Oh,
one of
cool.
those bins with all the different kitchen stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
look at that stuff. Look at stuff for the kitchen instead of shrimp nets and see you'll probably find the right size there. Because
Okay.
those have worked better for me than any of the fishnet stuff.
Well, and again, my biggest complaint is why is this food crap? Right? That's my biggest complaint. But I would rather the waste go down the garbage disposal than be put in the tank, right? Because then it's just adding to problems. So totally
Yeah,
with you there.
I
Good
totally get
suggestions. Thank
that.
you, Holly. But guys, for tonight, it is 10 o'clock. We've been going 2 hours again. You know, we could talk all night, but even for tomorrow, I've got 5 million things to do. And Chris Carey has been on me trying to get me to get the website up and get going. So I'm working on that too. So if there are any other questions, speak now or not forever. Until next
Forever
Wednesday,
hold
hold your
your
peace.
peace.
Yeah,
Till next
hold your peace
Wednesday,
till
hold
Wednesday.
your peace.
We will be back, of course. And Zen, you got to get with me on the side and tell me when you're going to jump in here and we're going to do the one-on-one. I'm excited for it. I wish someone would hand me 2 grand and say set up your own tank because that is like my dream. So I have to live vicariously through you, right? So you have to come in and share with us, and we want to see the process because it's going to be exciting. But for tonight, guys, I think I am going to end it, and of course we'll be back next week. If you have any topics you want discussed, all you have to do is message or post on the group or on the page, and we will make that the focus of the conversation. But as always, I just enjoy coming here every week and getting with you guys. I know a lot of people watch it afterwards. I know that's because of work schedules, but the more that people can come to the stream, the more discussion we can have and you can get your questions answered. So try to make it when we're live because that's always more fun. But for tonight, let's say happy one Wednesday and we'll see you next week.